Welcome to part 2 of my conversation with Josh Dulberger. If you listened to episode 1, the recording suddenly stopped in June, and I didn't get the end of that recording, so I decided to reconnect with Josh, which I didn't do for another 7 months, but that unintended consequences turned out to be a cool and good thing. In that time, Josh had joined a really early stage AI startup, and the company had been acquired, and he had stepped into a new role running an AI product lab inside another company, essentially building and testing new AI products from scratch. So when we picked the conversation back up, the focus shifted from what it was like being part of the very early AI wave, right, into what it actually looks like to build AI products now that everybody thinks they understand the technology, which of course they don't. So in this second conversation, we talk about that transition from the hype around AI to the much more practical work of figuring out what's actually useful. And Josh tells us about building this innovation lab to get paid for experimenting with AI agents for small and medium-sized businesses, and what it looks like to rapidly prototype ideas that might or might not work. We also talk about something a lot of people in product are wondering about right now, which is what kind of people companies are actually looking for as AI becomes part of everyday product development. So here's the second part of the conversation, and it's 7 months later, and let's go find out what's happened together.
Don't let rampant politics and clusterfuckery ruin all your projects and your sanity. Smooth ugly penny lines and make it all make sense. Get experience by osmosis here on corporate underpants.
So last we spoke, which is going to be 2 seconds ago for people listening, you were starting at PAX 8. You were
Right.
starting running an innovation lab with someone that you had great conversations with. It sounds like this role was almost started up for you, and that you were starting to think about hiring. And I was jealous of your job, and you probably didn't even know what it was exactly like yet. And you, I think, had one idea possibly for a product. Josh, tell us what has happened since then. What's going on with you in your job today?
Yeah. So we spent the summer adding some folks. We brought some folks over from the product and engineering org, largely because they were like ready to go and excited about working on something new, but they also had some subject matter expertise. They understood the personas in the market and those sorts of things, at least at a high level. And then we started adding the folks externally because we wanted to define our own subculture. So it's like growing a team and having it be a good mix of people who, again, knew the space and people who would have some fresh eyes. And we also spent a lot of time just talking to the folks that Taxi serves. So that's channel partners, also called managed service providers,
Right.
MSP. They're like these IT outsourcing shops. So over the last 20 years, most companies, unless you're really big, you don't have your own like IT staff. You use a third party company to set up your laptop, to add applications to your laptop, to onboard a new employee, to offboard someone and manage all the subscriptions, along with security and all sorts of other things. So almost everyone outsources to a third party. We call those folks managed service providers. That's who PAX 8 serves. And PAX 8 aims to be like the app store for those folks. So instead of having to go to Salesforce and a Microsoft and Amazon, they can go to one place, add subscribers, grow subscribers, away they go. So we said this over just talking and saying, look, what do you guys do with AI? And how do you see your SN customers, the people that you serve, starting to deploy out? Are they coming to you and say, how do we get this from being just a tool that people are using ChatGPT on the side and who knows what kind of data they're putting in there? Or are people just not aware of it yet? What's going on? And the more we had those conversations, the more we started hearing that there was a few of these MSPs that were really progressive, really all in on AI, bought this vision that they were going to become, instead of managed service providers, managed intelligence or managed agent providers.
Okay.
And the way they were approaching this, though, that's going to sound probably crazy to some people, but the way they're approaching it, they essentially do this as a consulting engagement. They go in, they ask you, you're running like a legal business of some kind. What are your needs? Can we set up some agent that just does legal research for you? And maybe you set it up to call specific cases from jurisdictions that you're interested in, or you define the boundaries of its knowledge base. And they would just do this as a hourly contract kind of basis. They bill you your legal agent, and then it's up to you. You keep the lights on. You pay the bill. If it has a problem, you can call us and we'll come back and charge you some more hours and try to figure out what's going on. And that just seemed a really hard way to get any kind of scam, to do these one-off engagement on the customer stack every time. And so we started playing with, okay, if we were going to try to help these guys make this into a scalable business with low marginal costs. So you go to another legal shop, you roll out another agent, you customize it a bit, but it takes, the first time, maybe it takes 40 or 60 or 100 hours. And the second time it takes an hour or two. And that's how you really get some steam in the engine. And so we started looking at what tools on the market could we use. A lot of folks use workflow automation tools like N8N, Zapier. There's a bunch of new ones that are called agent builders. OpenAI has one. Microsoft has one. But really, for this use case, it's very hard to use the existing tool stack. Like we tried to do it. We're like, let's do an experiment. Let's lab experiment. Let's just figure out how we would go build an agent that we could deploy to 20 customers and then manage centrally. And it turned out to be a complete nightmare. So that's when we
Talk
started.
about dog fooding.
Yeah, well, it was an experiment. Like we had truly dog food it, but we had some workflows that we had in mind. Those required dog food eat. And then but we didn't have like multiple customers. We didn't need multi-tenant where we could isolate data or anything like that. And that's where we started seeing like some of these real hard challenges with the existing tool set. Remember, folks working at MSPs, they're IT professionals, but they're not software engineers. They're not developers. And so you very quickly, and we are, like my team, and we very quickly started getting into, if you're a developer, there are some tools you can start using, but now you're getting beyond the technical depths of most of the folks that we think are going to be bringing these kinds of.
Okay, I want to pause real quick because I want to dig in and define some terms that I'd want to just to clarify. So you are at Pax8. Pax8 is a B2B company that
B2B, really.
B2B2B, right? So you help businesses that help other businesses.
Yep.
Okay. And you, Josh, are in charge of an innovation lab inside of Pax8, which is not just what we're doing in our ordinary roadmap, but also what can be evocative and new and innovative, and especially with respect to AI for B2B2B companies, for your company. And so you went out there and you had to build a team. So you got some inside people and you got some outside people. And then what you did, instead of just starting up a couple of projects, you started talking to customers, which is crazy. So you talked to some of the people who already use Pax8 to make their B2B lives easier. And you discovered something that I want to take a pause on. You discovered that other B2B companies weren't just offering software or managed services, they were also offering consulting. And the reason that happens, I believe, is because there needs to be, just as there needs to be some kind of early stage alignment in any project. I think that's what these agencies ends up doing, is figuring out what is the real problem that this business is trying to solve. Because a business would come and say, here, our problem is X. But an expert in X would say, your problem is X.1 and X.3. Not just X. Is that what they were doing?
That is right. And that is a part of the consulting value that I think won't go away anytime soon, frankly. The rub was that they were then, once they narrowed in on what the problem was and what a good solution might look like.
It was hard to build.
The solutions were all like very hand-built.
Very hand-built, okay.
One-offs, and the value being captured was like on an hourly basis.
Which is not scalable.
Instead of mapping it to like the value you're creating over time, and also like SaaS, like iterating on it, improving it, updating a model, changing a flow that doesn't work anymore. None of that. So that's where we identified an opportunity without giving short shrift to the business strategy side of it and the listening to the customer and grokking their problem.
Well, isn't this just another flavor of the problem we've had forever, which is, how do you create a repeatable process that puts out a good product?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Everything new again, right? Go ahead.
No, I think that's right. I think what it starts to look like is it starts to look like, the 90s, where you had, before SaaS, you had companies that were building a lot of custom software that were still dealing with the aftermath. And then there was this maybe we can consolidate around use cases and personas and generalize this so it's multi-purpose across a bigger space. We get some VC money.
But
And
Agile also probably came out of that, which is how do we adapt to the changes and the requirements that we discover as we start building this thing?
right. So
All of this is related.
and we can iterate faster, but there's still going to be lots of edge cases that frankly get no attention.
Right.
And I think that pops out if you just think about the last time you saw like a Salesforce deployment, people are like hacking the shit out of Salesforce to do all kinds of things with fields. And like, every time I go into Salesforce in any new company, it's a mess. And I think that falls out of it's like, it's a one size fits all solution, but it has lots of problems. And that's where some of the opportunity is for folks who are going to build the agents to have a custom solution that is an agent that's much more flexible and adaptable to your business. I don't even need Salesforce anymore. I just build a new database, right? And it mirrors your business and your business logic in a way that something off the shelf from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, never will.
Okay. So this is really okay. So if we back way back to corporate underpants, corporate underpants is about the misalignment problems that are higher up. And in my opinion, the cause, a very core cause of us putting out lackluster products. And you're at a very interesting intersection of that because you are charged with innovating at a company that serves other companies. And you are charged with innovating at a company that serves other companies that are trying to innovate.
Yes, that's right.
You're trying to help other service providers and software providers. Here's a question for you. How do you look for the right people for your lab? Is it a standard job description? Is it, because I know a lot of people listening would be like, sign me the hell up.
Sign me up. Yeah. So a few things. We are organizing in what I would consider like a prototypical technology product engineering org right now. So think product managers, software engineers, full stack, back end, front end, UX research, UX design. So that's like the kinds of roles I have right now. Platform engineer would be another one in the engineering space. But within that, we're looking for folks who are comfortable with the modern crop of AI tools, are interested in blurring some of those boundaries. So we might have a front-end engineer doing a little more design work, maybe a little more wireframing. We might have a product manager doing some more design work. We might have a designer who's actually got a working prototype in a couple of weeks of something.
Well, that means you're walking the walk because I just re-listened to our earlier recording.
Right.
You said where you think things are going is a blurring of the boundaries and people stepping into each other's domains. It sounds like you're actually actively hiring for that.
So we want people who are curious about that and are already doing it, have some, even if it's small because it's early days, but have some demonstrable interest that they can point to. That, oh, there was this time where the designer was too, there was a time where the front engineer didn't seem to understand what I was talking about, or whatever that is. And we're looking for that kind of on the resume. And I think that sort of dovetails with an attribute of curiosity. Like we want people who are, look, you can have your concerns about where the world's going for a variety of reasons. I sure do. And AI is one of the things I'm concerned about. But I want people who are at least looking at it, investing in it, figuring out how it can work for them and the places that they're operating and how it can drive value.
So for the people freaking out about getting work, which we all still are, you said earlier, just earlier in this broadcast, for those of people listening, but for us months ago, that you just wanted to see people who are willing to be curious and experiment. It doesn't have to be a big successful project that you ran. It has to, we have to be in a position where we get past our screw this attitude or grumpiness and into at least trying it and playing with it and kicking the tires of it.
And if that has to be outside of your work environment because your work environment doesn't let you have access to these tools, go vibe code an app with Claude tomorrow. Just come up with something and trace it through and spend an hour, 6 hours and see where you land. But the exploration of that process, I think, will be very valuable. And if you see the value there, then you're the kind of person that I'm going to want to talk to. Pitfalls are also worth noting and seeing where the gaps are. Like, look, right now I'm organizing the team around looking for the gaps in the current models and figuring out what can we build to fill those gaps. So I am not shy about the gaps that exist today when you try to go ask ChatGPT or Claude or whatever LLM you're using to do something for you. There's all kinds of problems, but we're in the business right now. I'm trying to figure out how to make bridges. And by using the tools, you'll start to see where they shine and where they don't. The flip side is you'll also steer away from something. Like there may be some things you're like, I don't have to build this because the front end for this is going to be an LLM.
Yeah, when I was first playing with one of the things I think about is analogies and the analogy of Icarus, the myth of Icarus, when when you fly too high, your wings melt. And what I tell people in design or any other like UX field is go play with it until it breaks. So I started talking to ChatGPT about personas until it started to sound like a fucking idiot. And at first I was intimidated because I was like, oh my God, this thing is totally going to take over my job. And then I got to a point where it flew too high and its wings started to melt. And that was so reassuring to me personally
Yeah.
to see that it was like, yes, it flies high, but at a certain point it starts to melt. And finding that as being in love with those problem spaces is cool too. I have also a self-serving question for you. As somebody who runs workshops and does alignment efforts with teams, with projects, with orgs. How are you doing some of when you go into a B2B conversation? So you're talking to somebody that could be a client of Pax8, which means they're a business that serves other businesses. How do you have those conversations to suss out what their real problems are? Do you have a process to do that? Do you ask them certain questions? Do you just let them talk? How do you figure out what they're not seeing that's, like, too close for them to see themselves?
I usually come in with so these are mostly customers. We usually know something about them.
Okay, they're
Right?
friendlies, yep.
So they're not just friendlies, but we also probably have some context on the kinds of things they're doing. And someone with our professional services or our sales team was like, oh, these people would be very interesting to talk to. So there will be some selection bias there, but it's probably the right kind of selection bias for where we are. We also run surveys with our user research team, which can identify certain folks who are responding away the survey that makes me just think, okay, I really want to talk to these two. Yeah. And then I will structure some questions that I'm especially interested in. So I will ask them how they're using AI, how they're using agents internally, and we'll try to get a sense of, are they building them? Are they deploying them externally for SMBs? Is that based on going and pitching them? Or is it inbound? Is it inbound interest from an SMB? And then I also try to leave a lot of space to let the conversation unfold. Often in the first few minutes, there's something that comes up that dominates the rest of the hour or whatever we.
That always happens.
And so I like to have a wallet with some other structure in it and some other questions in it to keep things, if it's not especially interesting or instructive. But frequently there's just listening, being a good listener and asking follow-up questions can really
I'll give you one of the tools that I use that's super, super easy.
Yeah, sure.
It's not gonna be news to you, but it's, again, self-serving. It's my podcast.
Of course.
The easiest question that I use is I ask people in the room to start giving me statements that start with the words or I want or I need from the perspective of their customers. And that is transformational. It giving them, forcing them to start with the words I want or I need, puts them into the brains of their customers and gets them out of saying, here's what we offer, and into more saying, I need to not spend so much time offboarding someone I fired 3 minutes ago. Right?
100%.
I need to be able to give a guarantee to my boss that they no longer have access to the system within 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Or I want to be able to research recruiters that are doing stuff in my field very fast and try 3 of them without paying for any of them.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And anything that gets us out of our own heads and into the mouths of the people, getting into your users' mouths.
Yep.
Maybe that could be the thing. I just want to, what else is up with you? What's coming up in the next 6 months? Tell us, because I don't want to take too much of your time, but I want to know what else is going on with you. Are you loving the job?
It's really good. It has its challenges for sure. And even like the setup within the org as a product innovation hub, I am trying to take away from anything that the core product and engineering team is working on. Like they're doing a lot of innovative things too, and they have their work cut out for them.
I would resent you if I was the core engineering team.
Yeah. So we're trying to navigate that. And
because I'm an innovator if I'm a core engineering team.
Absolutely. And so we're trying to define like what delivery looks like in some different delivery models where we can feel good about the lab's mission and core product engineering doesn't have any shade cast on the work that they're doing.
And maybe there's some ways there's got to be ways to bring them in to have some fun with this stuff too.
Yeah, you're spot on. So one of the things I'm working on right now is a sort of differentiated delivery model where some things labs will build and own in perpetuity, largely because they just have almost nothing to do with any of the core business stack. Like we think they're valuable for the core business, but it's almost like we could be a third-party startup building this that would incidentally benefit Pax8. So those are things that I think
Well,
labs.
it reminds me, wasn't it the Google 20% or something where you were supposed to spend 20% of your time doing something not specifically related to your
Right. One way to look at it is like we're a portfolio approach to that where we're the 20%. But another model that we have, two other models we have is there are going to be some things that we build and then want to pass off. Like we build it as a proof of concept because there's no bandwidth or for some reason there's no expertise to take on the project. And then we pass it off to the core team and they own it and they iterate on it. Another model is we may bring people in for tours. So the 20% point, or maybe it's not every sprint it's 20%, but maybe it's every year it's 20%. You come work with our team. We help you incubate an idea. You bring that home to your team at the end of the tour. And so I think those sorts of alternative models are going to help us build connective tissue. I'm the most worried about building things in labs and throwing them over the wall to
Yep.
the product engine. That
That-
like makes my heart sink a little bit. And so I want to approach that one with the utmost caution in that it'll have to be like a clear POC where we have things we're trying to prove and maybe some of that technical feasibility, but we're almost expecting them to rebuild it from scratch once we've proved that this can be done.
Quality
And
for
the rest-
like, it reminds me of like a physical body. You don't want to be the virus. You want to be the food.
Yeah. And
Right.
just back to the resentment factor, like
Yeah.
getting a product thrown at you from this other team, it happens to the best of us, but it's never ideal and it's never a lot of fun. It's always nice to be in fairly early in the ideation and the problem discovery phase. And so we want to make sure that's the general operating model, understanding that the needs of the business will vary.
Which means that you're in a delicate political position, which is also
Right.
an exciting one.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, I want to thank you so much for spending this extra
Of
time.
course.
And people should go and follow you. I have a couple people I want to introduce you to. And
Oh.
hey, everybody, thanks for listening. And I'll start putting out more episodes soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Corporate Underpants, and there's lots more to come. If you have any projects that you need my help on, if you're interested in coaching to become a senior product leader through understanding alignment in politics, or if you're interested in any of the classes or books that I'm developing, please visit my website, adlininc.com, and get in touch.